Was there a turning point, almost like a rock bottom, that made you just like, I can't do this any longer?
I couldn't see any way out. I just couldn't. And one day I just thought, I finally see a light at the end of the tunnel. I finally see a way out. And that way out wasn't to leave the police. That way out was to take my own life.
My name's Taylor James. I'm the host of the music and mental health podcast, The Waffle Shop. And essentially it's a podcast that was born out of quite a traumatic experience for myself. But it's given me my voice. It's given me the opportunity to connect with like-minded people, learn about myself, coping mechanisms. And each episode I'm joined by a very incredible guest to share their stories in the hope that we can all kind of take something away from it. And joining me today is someone, to be fair, who I've wanted to waffle with. Yeah, it's been quite a while. So it's quite a moment, to be fair, that we're doing it live at a wellness festival. But it's, of course, the brilliant Rob Hosking. Welcome to the Waffle Shop.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be here, talking to you finally. Yeah,
I know.
Lots of back and forth, and now we're finally here.
Yes. But I mean, to be fair, we're quite dramatic in the fact that we've waited to do it in a stately home.
Exactly. If you're going to do it right.
Exactly. I'm going to dive straight into it because your story is one that has quite a lot of twists and turns. Obviously, the career path, then the complete switch to something different, even to like the location of where you live now is like not where obviously you started. So I kind of want to like pass it over to you to kind of like introduce yourself and who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So I'm Rob Hosking, former frontline police officer turned motivational TEDx speaker. But there's a bit of a story in between.
We'll get to that.
But yeah, so like, I talk to businesses and events like this. Talk to business all about staff well-being and how we can create healthier, happier workplaces. Because unfortunately, I've been there and I've seen the impact of poor workplace culture, and it's fueled a passion within me to help ensure that businesses understand what makes a good workplace culture and make sure that people weren't treated the same way I've been treated. And make sure, we're on top of things like stress, mental health, and so many different things like that. So it's definitely fueled a passion within me, and now I'm like a dog with a bone, and I can't stop, and I won't stop.
So no pressure then.
No pressure.
Talk to me about the job then, or how the career started, because one thing that fascinates me is when you're asked as a child, like what you want to be when you grow up, and like what you want to be when you're older, and all these kind of stuff. Obviously, it's either like a policeman, a fireman, or, it's quite those kind of like real staple jobs. Was that always the case growing up? Did you want to be a police officer?
No, that's the thing. It was never my dream. I wanted to be a sports journalist. I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to be a film director. So all these things I wanted to be, there was creativity within them all. And unfortunately, my family were either police or military. So there was always this idea of what success looked like and what an ideal career path would look like. And it came to the opportunity where I studied history at university. I loved history and just went just because I loved it, rather than because I wanted to do anything with it. And at the end of university, the police were looking, and my brother messaged me and he says, by the way, I'm joining the police. I've put my application in. Do you want to too? And it came at a point where I was finished uni and I was like, what am I going to do in my life?
That real nice moment of like, what the hell am I going to do next?
And I was like, oh dear. And one thing led to another, and I thought, where's the harm in putting an application in? And when I told my parents, they were like, oh, brilliant, it'll be a great job and things like that. And the harm of putting an application in was 5 years later, I was still in the job.
You had to do the job.
Yeah. So it was one of those things, I'll never say I had a passion for it. I never did. I had a creative juice inside me that was very different to like my brother, where I think he suited the military, he suited the police kind of culture and lifestyle. But I was different. I was always different. I was always on the move. I didn't like being told what to do. Still don't like being told what to do. And I love flexibility and I love spontaneity. Yeah. Two things the police force were never going to give me.
No, these are the rules, you follow them.
So rigid. And at 22 years old, I kick myself sometimes thinking, Rob, if you asked yourself what were your core values back then, you would have realized spontaneity, flexibility were going to be them, creativity. But I didn't. And because I didn't know what my core values were, when I made a decision, like, I'm going to join the police, I didn't have it to base on anything. So I didn't say, does this align to my core values? All I had in my head was, this is a good job because I've been told by everybody around me that this is a good job.
It's an interesting one with core values, isn't it, though? Because at 22, we have no idea what a core value. I mean, some people still don't know what the core and what's important to us. With the rules and like the regulations and stuff, like how long were you in the police force for before you were like, this isn't for me?
Day one.
Strong start.
Yeah. Honestly, the first night at the police college, I remember me and my brother went and unpacked my bags in my room. And I had this wave of, obviously there's nerves because you're doing something completely different, but something wasn't right, where I was like, this is more than just nerves. This was, I'm going against something here within myself. And I wish I'd listened to that person, that inner voice at that time, but it didn't. And I remember telling my brother, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to leave. Because it became real. It was the first time it became real. And because it became real, I started thinking of my life as a police officer, and I didn't like it. And my brother was like, look, give it a day. At least give it a week. A day became a week became 2 weeks, 2 weeks became 12 months in the police college, and then all of a sudden we've got 5 years in the job. And it was one of those things, I always say this in life, I think it's so easy just to let life go by us.
Yeah.
And I let life go by me for 5 years, and sometimes I could kick myself for it, sometimes I get so angry at myself. But I had to do the work and I had to let go of that anger because it wasn't serving anybody apart from impacting me. But yeah, I do look back, and this is probably why I want to talk about my short story, and I share my story to anybody who'll listen, is because I'm like, I've been there and understood how I've went against my core values, how I went against a gut instinct inside me. And when I didn't listen to that gut instinct, it impacted me. And I always say it's easier said than done, yes, but your gut is never wrong.
No, it isn't. I love what you said about, there is a layer of anger when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I didn't do that. Or I wish I did do that. A lot of the talks that I listened to yesterday, and even kind of being on my own journey, I've always kind of picked up, like, we can kind of spend time in that pocket of anger or guilt or anything like that, but like it doesn't. The longer we hold on to it, the longer it's going to hurt. But just look at it as a lesson, and then it's like, okay, I don't like that. I'm not going to do that again. And it's like a real mindset shift once you get to that point. And it kind of, I think it unlocks a little bit of happiness. Well, not, it can, a lot of happiness. Your time in the police force, obviously, I know quite a bit about your journey and stuff like that. And obviously, we hear horror stories with the police and kind of like the ins and outs and like the strictness of it and all. Did that play a part into it? Like, have you, like if you're feeling that way anyway, and then you're seeing some really hard-hitting stuff, did that obviously just affirm that this isn't where I'm supposed to be, this doesn't sit right with me?
Yeah, there's so many things in the police that impacted me. Being told what to do was one of them, obviously, but I don't mind being told what to do when I see a purpose behind it. And in the police force, I'd always question everything. If I would describe myself in any words, it'd be I'd always challenge everything. And I would challenge things if they said, we need to do this, we need to do that, and I would challenge it. And I said, do we though? This is against, and I would always go back to the law and, well, wait a minute, we can't actually do this. And there was many occasions when I said this to my sergeant, and I was told, shut up and get on with it. Wow. And you think, I'm not here for this life to be told, shut up and get on with it. I have the morals within inside that I'm like, I don't feel right about doing this because it's wrong. It's against who I am as a person. So those kind of things, just a little example there, being told, shut up and get on with it when you're doing something unaligned, it's not good, and it's not a good feeling, and I didn't do it. But I would describe my police career in 3 words: negativity, stress, and trauma. The negativity was everywhere. I was seeing the worst in people day in and day out. I was seeing what people were capable of, but in the bad way. But also the negativity within the police culture. From my experience in the police, it was a macho culture. You didn't share your feelings if you were a man. You didn't share about how things impacted you. You got on with it, because see, if you did, people would look at you like, really?
Yeah.
And that negativity spirals. And I always talk about this in workplaces that I speak to, about this idea of work-life balance. And I believe that there's no such thing as work-life balance, because for me, it's just life. It's life balance. If I'm getting stressed out like this at work, if my mental health's getting impacted because of the culture at work, I can't just go home and be like, oh, well, that was just at work, so I'm okay now. You bring it home with you. That negativity, I was bringing that home with me. The trauma, I couldn't just take off that uniform and the trauma of what I'd seen.
It's like a uniform, isn't it? Like, yeah, that's it. I'll leave it in the wardrobe.
And you can't do it. So at night, I was ruminating in my head the decisions I'd made. Did I make the right ones? These life-death decisions, like, could I have done something more to save someone's life? And when you put your head on the pillow and you're thinking about these life-death decisions, it drives you crazy.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get away from it. So the trauma had an impact, and stress, it was chronic, it was excessive. And stress is part of life, of course it is. And we're all going to get stressed, and that's fine because we need to get stressed. But there's a level of stress which is good, and there's a level of stress which is bad. Now, I was under the bad one because it was chronic, it was excessive, but also I didn't have any coping mechanisms. None whatsoever. You didn't get taught those kind of things, because in the police force it was, you get on with it, you move on, you get on with it, you professional hat on, where these things don't impact you, or these things don't impact you. But they do. We're human.
It's quite I mean, obviously I'm never been in the police force or anything, but it's also quite almost like a, I don't know if it's a generational thing or even like a lifestyle thing, where it is that element of, especially when it comes to mental health, of like, we just kind of like put up and shut up and we carry on, that, that keep calm and carry on mentality. And I think both of us are sat on this stage now. The longer you put up and shut up, the worse and the longer the healing is going to take to get to a point to be able to talk about this kind of stuff. How bad did it get when you're in the police force, you've got all this going on, you're going home every night, which is almost like there's a risk there, like you're driving yourself insane, like you're questioning like your decisions, and obviously these aren't decisions that are just impacting you. Obviously you're protecting people. You've got like a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. Was there a turning point, almost like a rock bottom, that made you just like, I can't do this any longer?
Yeah, I would say there's two turning points. The first one, unfortunately, it wasn't enough to be a complete turning point. The second one was the main turning point, but the first one was to do with my mental health, and it all got too much because my mind was just in overdrive. I was mentally exhausted, physically drained, mentally just couldn't go on. And I looked at my life and I just thought, I hated living. And there I was, 25 years old, and I was like, I hated living. And I looked back and I realized it wasn't that I hated living, it was just that I hated living my life the way it looked. But at that time, 25, I couldn't see any way out. I just couldn't. And on one day I just thought, I finally see a light at the end of the tunnel. I finally see a way out. And that way out wasn't to leave the police. That way out was to take my own life. I couldn't see any other way. I didn't share how I felt with my family, my friends, my colleagues. Nobody knew what I was feeling, and I was just going through it all myself. And I wore a mask every single day because I was that person in the police force who was laughing, who was joking. I was making everybody else laugh. I was making sure everybody else was okay. I was like, but are you okay after what we've just seen? Okay, I'm here for you if you need to
You're
talk.
the fixer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet I was hurting so much, and I would talk people down from window ledges and bridges. I would convince them to live one more day. But every time I did, I always wished that I was on that window ledge instead. I always wished that I was on that bridge. And it came to the point where in July 2018, I thought, this is it. I'm taking my own life. Who will miss me? And just, that's it. I've made my mind up. And, I still get emotional. You'll be the same. When we speak about our experiences, it doesn't hurt any less. But you need to speak about it. But I remember that day like it was yesterday, and I got up, it was 3 p.m. I'd slept all day because that's what I did. When on my days off, I was a functioning depressed. I would just sleep until I had to go back to work. And I got up, walked down the hallway to go downstairs to take my own life. I had all the plans. However, something stopped me on the way. So as I walked along the hallway, my dog stopped me. And he looked up at me with these big brown eyes, and he gave me one big lick. And it was that one big lick that saved my life, because I saw that somebody needed me. And me and Louis, we did everything together. I took him everywhere. I thought to myself, I can't leave you. I didn't care about my family. I didn't care about my friends. I didn't care about my colleagues. But Louis, I was like, I can't leave you. And he gave me a reason to live. I didn't get better. Just, it wasn't like, oh, there we go, I'm fine now. I just had a reason to live, and I had to cling on to that reason. And I would describe myself as a functioning depressive for a couple more years until this last turning point. And yeah, I lived life where I worked.
Mate, I can't thank you enough for sharing that. That was, yeah, and so grateful of your dog right now. But like that in itself is a lot to unpack. But I feel honoured that I got to hear that firsthand. And I'm very grateful that you made that decision to kind of stay with us and, like, use your almost pain, allow it to become your purpose, and be able to tell that story to help so many other people. How are you feeling when you are telling that story now? Like, what emotions are you feeling?
Yeah, like I say this story as a living now. I'm a professional motivational speaker. I say this story in most of my talks, almost every single one. And no matter what, when I'm on a stage, whether it's to 100 people or 50 people or whatever, I still get a lump in my throat, and I still feel this inside where I can feel the pain. And it doesn't get any easier. And, some people say, it gets easier when you talk about these things. For me, it doesn't. It doesn't get any easier, but the purpose gets stronger. I guess that makes it easier, but, it doesn't get easier talking about it. But I know the impact it has. And, in the police force, I always wanted to help people. That was the main reason why I stayed in the job. I loved dealing with mental health cases, and in the police, we dealt with many mental health cases more than criminal cases, because that's the way the police kind of evolved. Now it's probably changed a little bit now, and I loved it. I love being there for people in their times of crisis. So when I think about my story now, when I share it, I always go back to that reason. I'm like, yeah, but I'm helping people in a different way now,
Yeah.
by sharing the story. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
No, it is, and I think it's an incredibly vulnerable position to put yourself in as well. And I think it's why I commend anyone who can kind of stand there and say, obviously, there's a lot of people who aren't as fortunate, who, they thought that was the only way out, and it's heartbreaking. So I think I kind of speak for you here, even though I don't want to, because you're the motivational one, not me. But I think if it helps that one person, then it was worth kind of having that lump in the throat to kind of reinforce that, like, as tough as it may be, like, there is always something to stay for. From personal experience, there's something quite beautiful about being at rock bottom, because the only way is up from rock bottom. It's not easy, and I'm saying it like quite candidly now, but there is a lot to live for. Very grateful to be on this stage with you right now. So the police force, you've kind of been through what you went through. What happened then? Was that like a bit of a wake-up call to be like, I need to do something now? Or talk to me like through the next steps of that.
Yeah, so obviously that was 2018. I left the police in 2020. And it was my last ever shift, which changed everything for me. You would think that was the turning point, getting that second chance of life, but it wasn't. I didn't change anything. I just kept living. But on my last shift, it was an early shift, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. I remember 9 a.m., unfortunately, me and my colleague witnessed a young male take his own life. And we were there for him as he took his last breaths in this world, and he was only 21 years old. And I remember being there for him, and I couldn't help, couldn't do anything. And just had to watch him take his last breaths, and I'll never forget the face, and I'll never forget the moment. But in the police force, that was the 9 a.m. I still had the rest of the shift to go, and you get on with it. But 5 hours later, my colleague then had a heart attack on shift and died.
Oh, wow.
For the second time on that shift, I was overlooking somebody, and I was like, I can't help. As the paramedics were giving him CPR, and then told us he didn't make it. And I was like, what's just happened? What has just happened? And my colleague had 29-year service, 1 year left until retirement, and he'd talked to me about his plans for the future. And I saw myself in the young male on that day, and I saw myself in my colleague. And I thought to myself, was I willing to keep doing what I'm doing in this unhappy life? For what? For a retirement that may never come? For a life outside the police that may never come? Or should I focus on living now, because life is in the present? And it just changed everything. It changed my mindset. But I always say my mind helped me then, because for the few months before then I had these pains in my knee. And I put it down to the excessive stress I was under at that time, because it was more stress than usual. And you know what it's like with stress and things, they always impact you somewhere. And on that last shift, the pain in my knee, after the last shift, the pain in my knee just became excruciating. And I went to the hospital and they said, you've tore your ACL. I didn't tear my ACL because I tripped and fell. I tore my ACL because on that last day, the trauma got too much, the stress got too much, and my mind said, we will make you stop. And I couldn't walk for 5 months after that last shift. And I had to take time off work, so I had to get away from it. And it was during that time away when I realized my body's done this. I need to listen. My body's done this for a reason. And to be honest, one of the main kind of thing that made me think, you know what, this is me done with the police, was I went to my inspector and I said, my mental health suffering after Roy's passing. And he looked at me and he was typing on his computer, and he looked at me and he said, you'll need to get that sorted, and went back to type on his computer. And I just thought, oh, I'm done. And this is why you can see the passion in workplace culture is now it came from me, because I'm like, I've seen what not to do.
Yeah.
And after that, I just think, you know, one of our guys, it's bad enough seeing a young male take his own life. It's bad enough witnessing what we witnessed. But one of our guys died and we had to watch. And for your inspector to treat you like that, I just thought, no, I'm done.
There's a lot there, and I think I hate that we almost have to go through these kind of things, and hate that it happens to people, to kind of be reminded of like the priority needs to be like our own mental health, our own kind of physical well-being, mental well-being. And it's really interesting because we did a talk yesterday as well, and one of the things around like setting boundaries and like self-care and, you know, all that kind of that comes with it. But one of the core things was, it was like, well, the universe will constantly send you a reminder until you learn the lesson from it. And I think especially when it comes to things like stress or, you know, workplace and stuff like none of it is worth it. None of it, like job, relationship, like friendship, none of it is worth like your mental well-being, because you need to, and it's weird for a podcaster to say it, but you need to stop listening. Like you need to stop listening to everything else going on around you and start listening to what's happening, because, you know, there was a strong, if you ignored your ACL injury, that would have been long-term. If you had ignored the trauma that was happening both physically and mentally, this could be a very different conversation right now, if any.
Exactly. And one thing about trauma is trauma doesn't go away until you deal with it. And in the police force, that last shift was a perfect example where I witnessed one trauma, and before I could heal from that trauma, I witnessed the next trauma. And that was the police force day in, day out, because whether it was telling parents that their loved ones had died or their children had died, whether it was attending fatal RTCs, whether it was just the aggressiveness of people, you're witnessing trauma day in, day out, and it just looked different. And I wasn't healing with any of it, because how can you heal from trauma when you go from one trauma to the next trauma to the next trauma? There needs to be things there that helps you deal with the first one. And I know the police forces and the paramedics and fire service are unique things where, of course, you're going to witness trauma to the extent that you do, but there's ways to heal as you go along.
You're also human.
Exactly.
Like I know like people like go into these kind of careers, and obviously you almost, I don't want to be that person to say like, well, it comes with the job. Like we get that. But at the same time, Like, it's the same way, like, you could work in an office and get a paper cut. Like, it might come with a job, but it still hurts. It still really hurts, and you need that time to heal, process. What did the healing process look like? Because, I mean, I can't even imagine where your head would have been at any of that point, to be fair.
Yeah, it was difficult, and I had 5 months off with me and Louis at my house, and my leg was up on the table for most of those days because I struggled to walk. And I think I just had to ask myself tough questions. I looked in the mirror, and the person looking back at me wasn't somebody I liked. I became this negative, pessimistic, bitter person. And I'm not that. I'm a positive person. I'm a happy person. I'm not a negative person. So I had to think, how do I become myself again? How do I find myself? And I had to ask myself the questions of, well, what were your core values? What is making you unhappy right now? The job. And all these questions started building up, and I call them now the 7 steps to a happier life. And this is what I did my TEDx talk on. And it was these 7 steps. Now, I didn't just write them down, I'm going to take 7 steps. I look back and I'm like, these are the things I asked myself. And there were important things that I had to confront. And confronting yourself when you're not happy with yourself is difficult. It's very difficult. But you've got a choice. Either you listen to yourself and accept the criticism that you're giving yourself and change, or continue the life that you're not happy with. And I've continued that life for long enough that I was unhappy with, so I had to break the mold, so to speak, and change.
Well, it's a cycle, isn't it? Like, there's a real kind of ugly cycle that I think we all go through,
exactly.
But with that layer of complexity that you're dealing with, it needed to be broken.
Exactly. And when my knee was better at the end of it, I went to New Zealand, and it was a complete spiritual awakening journey, and I did a camper van holiday around New Zealand, and it was just incredible. But on the first day of New Zealand, I went whitewater rafting. I went down the largest commercial waterfall in the world, and the raft tipped, and I was at the back of the raft, and I was under the waterfall, and I was like, oh. So I was under the water, and I could not get back up. I forgot the training that you needed to make yourself as small as possible to get back up, and I forgot it. And I kid you not, I was 1 second away from having to take the breath. I was like, oh no, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And for God's grace, I need to just try one more time. And I got up, and I swear, like, I was 1 second away. And I remember going up and gasping for air, and I was just like, I'm here for a reason.
Yeah.
There's a purpose here that I'm not fulfilling at the minute, because I'm still on my healing journey. I'm like, I need to figure out what my healing journey is, because I do believe everything's meant to happen in our lives. And I could have died. I could have. And I'm like, how many more signs to the universe need to give me? I was like, please stop. Okay, I get it.
So take the hit.
Yeah. But that was just, it was an awakening in so many ways, that New Zealand trip, because there's something spiritual that awoke within me, and my purpose awoke within me. And the purpose was share your story, help people, and change the narrative around mental health and workplace well-being. And I've taken that purpose on to this day, and I'll continue to do it.
And it's going so strong, like, to be, to go through what you did and then be like a TEDx speaker and, motivational speaker. Like, you were recently nominated for like the best newcomer. Yeah. Like, this is a sign of things to come. Yeah. Like, these are the good signs. Yeah, so take these ones. Yeah. Look at them, listen to these ones. But what is next? To be fair, before I dive into what's next, I want to talk to you about, you said about New Zealand and going, a bit of a spiritual awakening. I know that you recently moved to Barcelona.
Valencia,
sorry. I know there was like a Cia. Yeah. Is the environment important to you? Because obviously, I know you talk about like workplace environment and a healthy kind of like work-life balance, but obviously a physical like environment sometimes can be a real game changer. Was that a reason behind the move, or like what was the move to Valencia driven by?
Yeah, I was living in Manchester at the time, and I love Manchester, and it's a great city, but I crave the outdoors, I crave nature, I crave the sun. I'm a sun baby. And I wasn't getting those things in Manchester, and I think I realised over the years that my environment, my physical environment, really does impact my mental health, because I will have my down days when all you see is grey day in, day out. And I had the opportunity when I went fully self-employed, where I was like, well, what do you want to do? Because you can change your environment, and yes, there's still sunny days here. Used to be sunny days here, but no, today's all right. But
you brought it with you today.
Yeah, I brought it with me.
Grateful for that.
But I just thought, try it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't constrained by rules and regulations through other people and where I needed to be, in my days off getting cancelled. I was like, this is now my time. And I love to travel. And I just thought, let's see what Valencia is going to give me. And I always believe that we're at the right place at the right time. We're here where we were meant to be. And at the minute, I'm meant to be in Valencia. I won't be in Valencia forever. I won't be in Spain forever. But I'm here right now because I'm meant to be there. And yeah, I love it.
And I think as well, like you said it at the start of the podcast about your gut.
Yeah.
Like your gut will tell you when it's time to move. Exactly. It's time to like try the next thing. Exactly. Speaking of like trying new things and stuff like that, obviously you're moving more into like the motivational speaking and stuff like that. Like what is next for Rob? Like what are the goals?
I aim big. I've always been so ambitious, and that's one thing in my life you could always say about me, and people describe me as being relentless. And I am a dog with a bone now, that I won't stop, and I can't stop. Because when you have a strong purpose, when you have a strong mission, you can't stop. This is a joy for me to do day in, day out. And now, I travel the world, going to Europe and to America and the UK, giving talks to conferences or organizations about how we can create healthier workplace cultures. And I just want more. I just want more. And I won't stop until I get one. I want to travel the world with my speaking. I want to impact more people's lives, because, what I do isn't because I'm like, oh, happy days, I get paid money for this and I'll get more money and stuff. What makes what I do great is the impact I can have on people. And almost every single talk, somebody will come up to me, either in tears or not, but they'll come up to me and just say, you've made me change my mindset about something. Something's just clicked inside me. And every time I get that, I'm just like, that's why I do it. That is why I do it. So I can't stop.
I love it. I feel like I want to clap. If there was someone listening to this who might have been in a position that you've been in, or is just feeling a little bit like, I'm ready to make a move or, change my environment, what would the advice that you would give be?
I think we just need to jump, because I listened to Jim Carrey videos recently, and he talked about his dad, and he said his dad would have been a good comedian, but he didn't have the guts to do it, and instead he became, I think it was an accountant, a safe job where he was going to provide for the family, but it wasn't his passion, and he got laid off from that job. And the whole point of the story was, you can fail at things you don't want in your life. So you may as well try and do the things you love, because we can all fail in things that we don't love. So just take the jump. What have you got to lose? So that's the advice.
Easier said than done. That hit home. That did. Yeah. We're a music and mental health podcast, and I purposely never prep any of my guests for this question, because it's quite a big one. And to be fair, anyone, I think it's a good question to have, and it's good to have in the back of the mind. So feel free to kind of take this away with you, as long as obviously there's a lot more that you can take away what the brilliant Rob has said. But when the time comes and there's the movie of Rob, the journey you've been on, everything that's happened, when the end credits start to roll, what song's playing?
That's a good question. Macklemore, Other Side, or Sam Fender, The Borders. Both of them are deep, meaningful stories about their own journeys and their own childhood and the difficulties that they had. And Macklemore's about the drug overdoses that his friends had and the trauma that he's witnessed throughout his life. And Sam Fender's about his childhood and the trauma and how he got through it and things like that. And I think I could listen to them on repeat. They're my favourite songs because I can just relate to so much of it, obviously in so totally different ways. But hearing people speak about the trauma, sing about the trauma, really does have an impact. So those two, pick one.
Big songs, We'll have one start and the finish. You have been incredible to waffle with. Like I know for a fact there'll be people listening to this that can really take something away and it will resonate with them, and so much like incredible advice. So again, I'm going to thank you and your dog for like kind of like, you know, just reminding you that life is for living and like you are worth it to be here. Again, I just want to take the opportunity to thank Rob for joining me, you guys for being here in the audience, and a massive shout out to WowFest and the whole team for having us for the weekend. So yeah, thank you all for joining me for a waffle.
Thank you so much.